Welcome back, pod people. My guest today is Jason Goldberg, the writer of Stay Out of the Fucking Attic, a reverse home invasion film that I had a great time with, and which has a really eclectic cast of characters that's not the sort of archetypes that I normally see in almost any sort of movie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's the way you put it. It's fun because it's like I love the premise of Attic because you always see these home invasion movies where people are like going to a cabin in the woods or like your next where they're invading. But what happens when
Right.
you're stuck in a house and you're there to do a job and our cast is a bunch of moving, folks that work for a moving company and they get locked inside and there's monsters, there's evil Nazis. It's got a nice hodgepodge of characters with our moving company too. So I just thought it would be a fun premise for a movie. And yeah, no, I'm really proud of it. That was like my first feature that got produced that we sold to Shudder. And yeah, from there, kept working, did a movie called Glorious. We've got a few movies right now. We're actually shooting a movie with Epic Pictures that I really can't talk about, but we're filming it in Florida and it'll be released next year. It's really exciting. But Attic will always be a special thing for me because it literally came out like the week of COVID when everything kind of shut down. And yeah, no, it's fun. It's exciting, and I appreciate you having me.
Great. Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting that it was shot during COVID. I've watched a lot of movies that were shot during COVID, and most of them do the sort of like screen life thing where the characters are not in the same room as each other. Whereas I
Right.
guess this you worked by just having like a really small cast and then also a really small crew,
Well,
or
we actually lucked out. We actually shot this in 2019. It came out the week COVID shut. It,
oh,
it shut down the U.S. So
okay.
there's a reason why Stay of the Attic was like one of Shudder's most watched movies. I think it was number four of that year with like Mortuary Collection, which is an incredible movie that Ryan Spindell did. But we kind of lucked out based on not having a pandemic, but based on the fact that people were at home and they wanted to watch new content. And so we actually did shoot a movie called Glorious during the pandemic, and that was with J.K. Simmons and Ryan Quanten, and that is about as pandemic-y as you could get. Where we built a bathroom and we had Ryan Quanten
Oh yeah,
acting.
I've seen Glorious.
Yeah, yeah, and then we had
Yeah,
J.K.
okay.
Simmons all voiceover. We knew that we had to do voiceover for that. So yeah, we were in Mississippi filming that one. This one for Attic, we shot that in Utah. The guys at Top Dead Center Films, I guess the question always becomes people ask me like how do you get a movie made and whatnot. I actually worked with them previously, and so I worked on a few shows for Gary Auerbach's company called Go Go Lucky. It was reality TV. I'm a TV producer by trade and a horror writer by passion, and I wrote the script in about a month and a half, and then I gave him a copy of it, and we were financed within 24 hours. It was a nice thing. It worked out well. I was happy.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like some good serendipity. Um, so stay out of the fucking attic. Well, okay, so first of all, I keep seeing
Yes.
this released, I keep seeing this referred to with two, possibly three different titles.
Mhm.
So there's stay out of the fucking attic, there's stay out of the attic, and then there's stay out of the censor sound
Yes.
attic. So tell me a bit about like, is the lack of the word fucking, is that just to increase marketability or
I when I wrote it, it's called Stay the Fucking Attic because I thought it was so fun and so ridiculous because it's like you do have like Don't Fuck in the Woods and movies like that and a lot of movies with S bombs and F bombs in there. But there was really just one rule that these guys had to follow. So it just kind of just worked out well because if they didn't go in the attic, it would have been a different situation. It would have been a happier movie. Everybody would have gotten paid. Everybody would have, moved on to other houses. But I just thought it would be such a fun idea when it came to marketing it and trying to get it on shelves in Best Buy and Walmart, not so much. So it's very similar. Like you'll see, we've got posters where you see the door, it's got the giant swastika on there, but then you've got the cover of the book of the Blu-ray and the DVD. There's no swastika. It really becomes a marketing thing, and we want to get as many eyes on it as possible. So you could have the crazy stay out of the effing attic with the swastika front one on there if you really want to be like balls out noisy, or you could just go like, retitle it just Stay at the Attic and just have a nice door. It really depends on who the buyer was. And it's
Yeah.
different. In Germany, we've got a different cover. We had different covers in Spain. It's exciting when folks want to kind of do that and kind of attempt to make something similar but different and just different marketing tools for your movies.
Yeah. I'm really curious how like the German audiences reacted to this, if you happen to know.
I can tell you that some audiences were really, really happy with it. Other audiences, not so much. As a Jewish screenwriter, I kind
Yeah.
of wrote this with a tongue-in-cheek, attitude because I love The People Under the Stairs and I love home invasion movies. But I always know, I've written some really big projects, and then if you want to get your movies made, sometimes you got to start smaller. And so for me, it was really kind of like, let's make something that's really, single location, make it feel bigger than natural, have big characters, have a lot of gore. And I think, when it comes to like certain audiences, they watch these movies solely for the gore. There's an audience that wants to watch at Pupil. There's an audience that like, these Nazi type horror movies. And I didn't really want it just to be that. I want this to have like an element of, like Frankenstein's army, where you don't know what you're going to find in the house, whether it's going to be conjoined twins, whether it's going to be monsters that, work with our famous Nazi, which I don't really want to give too much away with who he is because some people might not have watched it. Spoiler alert, the movie's been out for like 3 years, so you could definitely,
Yeah.
take your time
Th-
and check it out.
This is in general full spoilers podcast, so feel free to spoil
Okay.
things if you want or to not, your choice.
Well, that's the thing. Is like I always want to hook with my movies and my scripts that I write. I'm like, what would have happened? Like everybody always says the Nazis went to Argentina. They went away. They left Germany. I was like, well, what happens if one of them like found a way to survive?
Yeah.
And that's really the whole premise of this movie is survival. And it's it works for the moving company. It works for the twins that he experiments on, and truthfully, I guess with Mangala, our Nazi trying to escape, it was also him trying to survive and move on further too, because he's always on the run. But yeah, I guess the answer to your story, what do German people think about this movie? I don't know. No one's, if I see a German person and they've seen it, I'll ask them. But I try to be it. It's hard because I never want to label anybody. I want to make movies that are for everyone. And there's a lot of history with World War II clearly, and there's a lot of you do get these genre movies that are genre mashups where you're dealing with World War II and you're dealing with vampires and that type of stuff. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to kind of do my own little take on it and work with some great practical effects in the long run. Vincent Guassini, he did he works a lot with he did Dogma. And so I'm originally from New Jersey. I live in California now, but I always wanted to work with him and I sent him the script and the mock-ups that he created for these characters were so cool. What he did for the twins, the conjoined twins in the attic, creepy, very creepy. Our Crawler, which I kind of take the name the Crawler from The Descent because I love that movie so much. It's one of my favorite movies. And so that's Mangala's like assailant. He's got a full swastika on his head too. It's just like you want to make like you want to make visceral images that people that'll stick with them. As someone who just saw like The Long Walk, I loved it. Weapons, I
Mm.
loved. And so I'm a genre guy and I want to make characters and villains and monsters that people talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. So the movie is, like you said, it's about Mengele as the antagonist. But the part that I found most interesting, and certainly the most surprising, was one of the protagonists,
Mhm.
who is a sort of reformed neo-Nazi,
Yes.
which is
Yeah.
not something you see very often. Um, so how did you come up with that idea for the protagonist, and like how was that received?
I think you're always going to want to have foil characters. You're always going to want to have good versus evil, and you're going to want to have characters with deep backgrounds that you could kind of you know that way they're just not one-dimensional people. Everybody's got backgrounds and histories and dark past, and so I thought it would be interesting to take this character and what happens if he was reformed. And this is like he started it's called second chance moving because that's what he believes in.
Right.
He's got a background from being an awful human being, but then he hires all these other people who went to prison trying to give everybody a second chance because you are bigger than your mistakes, and that's really something that he kind of wants to push. And the very end, you see that he does have a swastika tattooed on him. He does have
Yeah.
these different, tattoos, and he literally purges himself of them. He ends up like ripping them off his own
Yeah.
skin, and it's very visceral, very disgusting. But it has to be because, those images, that the image of a swastika, the image of like, the lightning bolts, the SSs and whatnot, they aren't, you know, currently, I know we live in a very political time and things are really, really awful right now, but those symbols should elicit some form of awful reaction based on what they're about. And
Yeah.
so when he removes that, he's literally cleansing his body of his history and ending the evil that lives in the house and hopefully ending the evil in his world.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a really that you mentioned gross images that stick with you, and that was definitely, I think, the standout one from the movie was him cutting the tattoo off of himself. Um, can you tell me a bit about how you shot that scene?
That was, well, I wish I was there. I wasn't in
Ah,
Utah when they were filming it, but I
okay.
know that when we were working with Vincent, it was really, really important just to make sure that our actors, everything looked good, everything worked well. The most important thing is that we needed to shoot it close. We needed it to be bloody because people want to see the gore. You want to see the gore, and like it's like weapons. You want to see. I forgot what her name is. The witch woman. You want to see her get her comeuppance. And so when he's cutting his own tattoo off, it's about as visceral as getting a boot stomp to the head. It's
Yeah.
just it's not a pretty image, and it shouldn't be. And it should be. If it's self-inflicted, it's even more powerful, despite it being more painful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's funny because when we were looking at locations for this, I did a lot of prep work for it with the team. We were actually looking at the same house where they shot Hereditary. The problem was it looked too much like Hereditary. It's all in the same, like, you know, it's Utah. It's literally like the house that we shot it at, the exterior and the interior. We didn't have to do much like art to it. It was creepy. It was gross. And the most, I think most of the art department went to just prepping up the lab in the basement. That was about
Yeah.
it. Otherwise, it's the beauty of a moving company. All you need is to have things in boxes and ready to go. That's another way to keep things down in price.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the moving company idea, and how it reminded me of a few other movies. The Plumber from 1979, which is, if I recall correctly, it's Australian,
Okay.
which is about well, both of these movies, The Plumber and Clawfoot from 2023, which I've also interviewed the creators
I've never
of.
seen Clawfoot, but I'm curious now about it.
Yeah, so both of those are sort of the antagonist and protagonist are reversed from this, where it's the person who lives in the house is our protagonist, and they hire workers to come into their house and do some stuff. In The Plumber, I mean, it's a plumber, obviously.
Yeah,
In Clawfoot, it's install this clawfoot bathtub in my bathroom, and
that's cool.
and then the people who got hired end up being malevolent. And so it was really interesting seeing it the other way around. Uh, and in particular, the thing that, like, there was a line, I forget exactly what it was, but there was a line where Mengele says that, like, I really did just hire you to move my stuff. This wasn't planned as a trap,
Yeah,
but now that you know I have to kill you.
exactly.
Um, and which threw me for a loop. I thought that, it's a horror movie. People are being lured into a house by the guy who's clearly the villain. He's going to be luring them in on purpose in order to do something bad to them. But no, it was just he just needed to hire movers.
That's it. And that's kind of the beauty of a movie like this. But I one of my favorite movies is Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Because here it
Hmm.
is, just two guys who are hicks. All they want to do is have a nice weekend. And everybody else is ruining it. And so it's just like, I love putting people in that type of characters in that type of situation where you're like, you expect these guys to be like, okay, let's steal from him, let's loot him and whatnot. No, if you do your job, you'll be fine. Follow the rules. Just don't go in the fucking attic and you're fine. You didn't follow the rules, you fucked up, and now you're gonna have your comeuppance. Fortunately, when you've got people with, pretty crazy backgrounds, they can fight for themselves. So that was, a fun thing to do. And I like Schillinger's character. That was Ryan Francis. He was the kid in Hook. He played
Oh,
young, yeah. And so that was, and we named him Schillinger just based off of the show Oz because I I love that. That was one of my favorite shows. That was J.K. Simmons' character, and I let him know that when we shot Glorious with him too. I'm like, 6 degrees of J.K.
All right. I haven't watched Oz. I watch a lot more movies than I do TV
Yeah,
shows.
this was just like
So,
classic, and like it was a cool. Like he played a Nazi in that too, so I was like, yeah, let's just keep the ball going.
all right. Yeah, the whole like you're in this space with a very dangerous person, but as long as you follow the specific, seemingly arbitrary rule that they lay out, reminded me of like old Germanic fairy tales
I believe
where
it. Yeah,
yeah, where fairies have these like rules that don't make any sense to us, but if you break them, something like terrifying happens. Um,
yeah. I think what I loved, I always wanted to do like I was inspired by movies like Saw and all those type of things too, where there's so many elements to this movie. It's you've got Nazis, you've got monsters, you've got people who are being tortured and turned into monsters. You've got literal traps where the bathroom turns into a gas chamber, which I got a lot of shit from people from that, but I thought it was such a clever and unique thing that I haven't seen yet in a movie. So, I like having the idea of you've got these traps, you need to escape. You need to utilize how this guy, our character, that was Bryce, he was Carlos, and he's trying to get out of the bathroom and he's using this whole trick that Schillinger taught him how to remove it to get the door off. And so it's
I
just like,
did,
you want to take these things that you learn or these things that movers know how to do and use it
yeah,
towards their favor.
yeah, I did like that. Like as soon as they showed how to remove the pins from a door, I was like, "Oh, I've done that before. I
Yeah,
wonder how that will come up again later in this film."
exactly. But it was like, it was fun. And originally, like, we were gonna do like make it really ridiculous where there's the whole library sequence where he's getting rid of all the books. It was gonna be like 200 copies of Mein Kampf. And I was like, we're not gonna buy or have prop team make that. It's ridiculous. Because at some point it becomes, horror. There's always parody in horror. I like to put horror movies and kids movies on the same plate. You get to do all this world building. You have to make the audience believe that this stuff is real. You've got to believe that Aunt Gladys is real in weapons. You have to believe that the crawlers are real in the descent versus it being all inside this woman's head. With this, everything unfortunately is real as shit. The house is creepy. Our
Yeah.
host is not the nicest guy, but there's a method to everybody's madness. If they decided screw it, take the money and leave, they would have been successful. There's an element of greed to this movie too.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned children's movies. I wrote a children's horror game, and one of the things that I like, one of the patterns I noticed in children's horror when doing a bunch of research about that is that um, in a lot like in adult horror, there's something horrifying going on, and frequently, especially if it's something supernatural, there's an element of like the protagonist can see what's happening but doesn't believe it.
Yes,
But then in children's horror, the children almost always are like immediately accepting of whatever the supernatural thing is that's going on. And then a huge portion of the horror in the story comes from the adults not believing
perspective.
them. Yeah, the social horror aspect. And so that was something that I can find annoying when done in adult horror of the like, oh, I don't believe you about the stuff. And so it
The
was
boogeyman isn't real.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or even just like, oh, I don't believe you that this nice old man is creepy.
Yes.
And in this case, like the fact that as soon as the one character found the books and
It's
everybody
pretty
took
early
each other
on too.
seriously. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
pretty early on where you find the books and you're like, well, everybody's allowed to have a history and a bad, like, that's the thing. It's like you've got to put it from the perspective of here are guys who've been to prison, they've done bad things, and you've got to understand that other people do bad things. It just becomes, are you bigger than them? Have you moved on? Is really what the whole theming of that one is. But yeah, no, I like the characters. I never thought like the first movie that I would have made is a Nazi movie, just because I've written so much before that. I did a Zombies on Titanic script that really did really well in
Oh,
Hollywood. I did a UFO cult movie that's been optioned 4 times that made the hit list. I've got a conversion therapy camp one that is Saw at a conversion therapy camp where they're using the treatments against the counselors, and it made Big Brig's top three out of 16,000 submissions. So it's like, I love writing, I like storytelling. I just want to see movies that aren't being made. And that's my big push. And it's like, I knew Attic for me was going to be a monster movie. I love monsters in the house. It's just one of my favorite things is just creating monsters and the art behind it. And there's so much suffering, there's so much tragedy associated with the Holocaust. And I'm not trying to make fun of it in any way because, this is just one of those what if situations. What if Nazis were able to escape and what would they be doing now?
Yeah.
That's it. I don't want to, promote hate or any of that stuff. I think it's all about telling a story with characters that you care about and putting them in really obtuse, shitty situations.
Yeah. Really quick aside, if you or anyone listening to this is interested in a conversion camp horror movie that did get made, Children of Sin, I really enjoyed, and I interviewed the writer director Christopher Wesley Moore about that. So that's a good one worth seeking out. Um, yeah, the characters and how the characters all like respected each other was a really interesting point. Like even after the reveal that one of the three main characters is a former neo-Nazi,
Yeah.
um,
And then you've got an African
back,
American, and
yeah,
how she responds to it too is just like, can you trust these people who gave you a second chance?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's the, that's the thing. It's like, can I trust you? Yes or no? It's a hard thing. It's a hard pill to swallow because when you're looking at these characters, like you've got Morgan who played Imani, who's just so loud and fun. And then you've got Carlos, who's got, his own reasoning why he went to prison. And, he's a dad, he's got responsibility. And then you look at Schillinger, who ultimately is a guy with a haunted past, and he wanted to make good on it. You know, everybody's trying to escape their demons until they get locked inside of with this house and they have to face them head on. And that goes from, poor little like Sarah and Anne are my favorite characters just because it's like you've got these two twins are conjoined. One could speak, one can't. I'm an identical twin too. So maybe
Oh
that's why
wow.
I did it. But yeah, no, I've got a twin brother out here. We're not clearly conjoined, but
I
I just always liked the
don't know.
idea.
Maybe you're connected by the foot, and I just can't see it
That's
off
it.
screen.
That's it. By the Johnson. No, for me, it just becomes like I want to tell, when I was studying, when I was in Hebrew school as a kid, they would always say that, they would do experiments on twins. And being a twin with my brother, that was just something kind of like stuck with me because they
Yeah.
want to see how one reacts and one doesn't react. And they would suture people together and, they played the mad scientist role. And so I just wanted to modernize that. And I wanted to take the fact that, like, the reason why they are, doing this to the Jews itself is just like, they've been through so much, and Amani's character is very similar, where, the African Americans, they've gone through so much with slavery, Jews went so much with the Holocaust that, they create this enzyme that these Nazis need. And that's why, like, this incredible sequence where, like, with the eye and whatnot, it's so gross. Like, I don't know. There's a game called Dead Space, and they do a lot of like eye horror to it too. And it's like eyes and teeth will always be like messed up, but there's got to be a reason why he's doing what he's doing. Unless you're just like a nihilist and you're just getting random people and keeping them in your attic and then moving. There needs to be some reason. And I wanted. I've never seen anything like this done before. And I'll tell you, I've done a lot of research, and you build out different enzymes, and you're able to do that when you are going through your body mutates essentially. And so I don't know. It's funny. It's like I try to do as much research on these movies as possible, and whether it's like how it comes out on the screen is whether it's going to be work or it's going to be campy. And I'm pretty happy. Like this was a small movie. It was a small movie, and I say that like a small movie, but everybody brought so much to it with the acting and the location itself was such a great character too. Like every room in there was just like crazy. And I love the sequence where it's like where like you see the twins looking down, like you see from the hand in the ceiling. You just got to do such cool stuff, and we were able to really create an awesome playground for the cast.
Yeah. And so since you brought up the biology and chemistry and stuff, I have to ask, did you write out the description of how the Zyklon B poisoning looked, like what his physical reaction to it was, or did the
I did
director come
research
up
on it.
with it?
Well, that's the thing. I did the research on how it should look and whatnot, and then we ended up working with our prop team just to make it look right. It's been that
Well,
with and
I mean,
throwing the
like it
gas.
doesn't cause bleeding from the eyes.
No, no,
I
but
mean,
it does cause internal bleeding though. That's the thing.
yeah, but
Yeah,
eh.
it's a horror
um,
movie. Got it. You
yeah,
got the
yeah, I was,
physical
yeah, I was just,
release.
I didn't actually know what the symptoms of Zyklon B poisoning were before watching it, and then as I was watching it, I was like, oh, I wonder if that's accurate or not, because
There
like
was a decent amount of
it's very
accuracy.
movie looking.
Yeah, we try to be a little, it's a movie, but you want to take some of the truths and you got to fabricate it too. You know, it's got to be a horror movie, and
Yeah,
it's got to act quickly. It's like the gas chamber bathroom.
yeah,
You've got to. There's only so much you can do.
yeah, yeah. The speed at which it acted was realistic, but the only part that I think was unrealistic was the eye bleeding. It even got the fact that, unlike a lot of other poisonous gases, if you get out of the Zyklon B and then just breathe normal air before it kills you, you can recover from it.
Mhm.
Um, and indeed that happens in the movie.
Yeah.
So most of the people that I interview are either directors or writer directors,
Mhm.
and it's not very often that I interview somebody who's just a writer, and or rather interview them about a movie that they've just written. Um, have you directed anything? Do you desire to direct anything, or is writing? You
Yeah.
expressed a lot of passion for writing
I
earlier.
love writing. I'm a writer producer by trade. I've directed some shorts. I direct a lot of reality TV, interviewing people for like shows like Botched, and I've worked on like Wipeout, big fun shows. But ultimately, I'm right now we're raising financing. We got some first in money for a feature for me to direct. Just something I wrote, found footage, just because it's easier to get in that way. I love found footage. Um,
Exactly what I did. Yeah.
yeah, it's my favorite thing. And so it's like but I'm a writer producer, so it's like I produced this one. I was one of the lead producers on Glorious with J.K. Simmons. I have a movie on Tubi that Screenbox put out. I was an EP on that, but I was basically a producer helping the director Matt Sampier. It's called Creeping Death. It's a fun Halloween movie. We shot in Syracuse. And yeah, it was one of the biggest movies. It was like number two next to Terrifier 3 last year, which is really exciting. We did that one. I produced a movie, I Will Never Leave You Alone. I do a lot of sales, so I'm an EP by selling movies to Dark Sky, Epic Pictures, Screenbox, Shudder. Trying to think who else. I've got Cranked Up Films in my arsenal. I've got Terror Films, the guys who did Hell House LLC. I sold them Greywood's Plot, which is an incredible, fun black and white movie by Josh Shifter. Is just super fun. It's like it's funny because like when people bring me movies to be an EP and sell them on their behalf, it's just like, do I find this movie charming? It was a black and white movie, basically the island of Dr. Moreau, but it's told from the perspective of a basically a YouTuber who loves cryptids and he gets a video of the chupacabra. And so Greywood's
Okay.
plot is the guy's Greywood. And so he goes over and he invites him over to find the chupacabra, only to turn him into a cryptid himself. And it's super fun. I love it. I think I just try to be there for the filmmakers because I know sometimes it's like I've been on both sides where you're the creative and then you're like, well, what do I do with this media now? Which festivals do I go to and whatnot? And I unfortunately never had really a mentor when I came out to Hollywood. I learned from the streets of Hard Knocks. I made my first short film after getting hit by a car and using the lawsuit money to make it. So, and that was it was called Metamorphosis. It was basically an LGBTQ version of Kafka's Metamorphosis, but told from the perspective of a young man who he's coming out to his parents, but they see him as vermin. So it's like kind of like doing a smarter take on like, classic work. So yeah, it's hard guys. Like I love producing, I love writing, directing, and I know what these movies are because I always like to think that the writer is the director on the page because you would see in your head what you're writing, then the director puts it on the screen, and then you've got your editor, who's basically your director of post. And so I think it just becomes like, having done all these roles, I know exactly what I want this to look like. It's about hiring that team that you say, well, I want to do that shot from, let's throw out movie. There's the Chaperone Play the Navigator where they do this. Let's try to emulate that and imitate it in this thing. And so just being able to communicate effectively, that's what makes you a good director. Being able to have a good rapport with your crew, with your cast, and getting the most out of them. So the scenes feel real. That's what makes you a good director. I was supposed to co-direct Stay in the Attic, and things. One of those things I just can't talk about right now, but it broke my heart when it fell apart because I made this movie because I knew what I wanted it to be. But I was lucky enough to be in a situation where I brought on the team that I wanted to work with. Like our DP Brian Sal is incredible. He worked on Jimmy and Stiggs. He works on Joe Bagos, all of his movies. He did a movie with the lead singer of Cursive that played Beyond Fast. I think it's really about having a crew because like making a good crew because with these small movies, you are a traveling circus and you need to be, able to communicate it with your friends when and the different members of the crew when things are going well, when things are not going well, when you're behind, and when things just don't work and you've got to get creative.
Yeah.
I think it's just you've got to be prepared for everything and just also listen. Because I know a lot of directors don't listen and then they're like, well, we got to go do reshoots because we didn't do A, B, C, D, F, G. And you're like, I told you to do that and you didn't do it. And now people are pissed. So I think the biggest thing is just as a writer, my biggest thing is always doing bullet points. Here's my outline. This outline is going to become a full blown synopsis, like you'd see on Wikipedia. I then turn that into a script. Same thing with directing. Like, what are you getting out of each scene? What is the key thing that you want to do? And if it's not going to be something like right here in your face, it better be happening in the corner, like behind you, where a cool eyes going to say something's going down. There was this great movie. Now it's going to kill me what it is. It was called Devil's Pass. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No.
So The Devil's Pass it's on Netflix. I love this movie because it's a found footage film about people looking for a film. I believe they're looking for a film crew or just people who went missing in Russia. And you end up seeing like monsters in the background and flickering of the camera's not working, only to learn that not only is it a monster movie, but it's a time travel movie. And it
Oh.
is so awesome because the majority of it takes place like in broad daylight during the snow. So like if
Hmm.
you got to see something like it's all in the background and it's like something just moving within pure white. It's so cool.
That does sound visually fun.
I highly recommend Devil's Pass. That's one I love that one. That one
What
and
was
like in
what was the Island of Dr. Moreau like one? What was the title of
the
that?
Greywood's Plot. So
Gray.
Josh, the director of that one, he won, I believe, Rebel Without a Crew, the Robert Rodriguez show. And so
They made
he
a
he
show out of
yeah, and
I
so
didn't
he
I
he
didn't know that existed.
yeah, so he competed on it. He won. He made this movie, and then he came to me. He's like, I don't, I made other movies in the past, and I'm not really sure what to do. It's like a black and white movie. It's a unique take whenever you're going to do anything in black and white. Certain movies get the home run where you've got like Lake Michigan Monster or Hunters of Beavers. I just saw my buddy's movie last night, and it was the world premiere of Degradable. Aaron Mento directed it, and he did 16 bits and Ugly Sweater Party. I'm like, you're taking a big swing by doing something in black and white, but I also know when you're doing things in black and white, when you can do a little bit more with the budget. Same reason why you do found footage, that type of thing. But yeah, no, I love Greywood's Plot. It's so fun and there's so much heart to it. And it was just like I remember I was talking to Josh, like, dude, let's do the big swing. And we had a premiere and ended up playing Joe Bob's Jamboree and
Oh,
which is huge because that all you do
yeah.
is that's the celebration of indie filmmaking, and that's why you do it. And so we had the perfect audience for that. I think I played UK Fright Fest too. Those guys are incredible.
Nice.
Atlanta Horror, I think we played, but there's so many festivals these days, and I always like going to the festivals because I was with Matt when Creeping Dead came out at UK Fright Fest because we knew there were problems with it, and you'll never get a more honest reaction from at your world premiere. Also with like Letterbox, and so it's like the movie played. It could have played better. He went back to Syracuse. He did reshoots. He listened to his audience. He
Hmm.
redid the color. He redid a bunch of the sound and some music. We put it in a brand new cold open. It was a brand new movie, and people loved it. Loved it. So
And if anyone listening to this would like to hear more about the production of Creeping Death, I interviewed Matt on a previous episode.
you did?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I love Matt. He's right now on tour with it's like Creed, but like Hinder. I was like, yeah, he's a huge Creed fan. I'm sure he talked about Creed the entire damn time. And I always tell him like I'm more a punk rock emo screamo guy, but I just with arms wide open, I'm good. It's not my thing. But I know you know Matt. I love him to death. I've known him for years out here. So
Yeah. And you talked about the film premiering at Joe Bob's Jamboree,
yeah,
another a more distant connection there, but my found footage film is premiering at my local drive-in
that's
in
huge.
October.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I think there's nothing better than seeing a movie like with your friends. The drive-in is such a great place. Like, we're losing a lot of them, but
It
I'm
really is. Before moving to this town, I had never been to the drive-in before, and now it is just my favorite way to watch the movies. It's so great.
I grew up in Jersey. For me, it's like a little slice of Americana. It's like listening to the Gaslight Anthem, or just it's just so you're sitting in your car. Like during COVID out here in LA, they turned all these like parking lots into drive-ins, and so you would just like literally just open up the trunk. The kids would sit in there, and you'd watch like Lilo and Stitch. It was great.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
wonderful.
Yeah, no, I think it's fun. I think, it's hard because it's like the audio will never be perfect at a drive-in. You're not going to get the AMC quality, but what you do get is, you get an audience that you normally wouldn't have.
Yeah, and I mean, some people bring their own speakers that connect to the radio and are pretty decent. And personally, I'm one of those people who doesn't like how loud most movie theaters
Yeah.
are, and so for me, I prefer the audio at the drive-in.
So now I'm going to produce you. I'm going to ask you questions. Are you are you excited? Are you scared? Are you nervous? Because I'm sure you're gonna, do a little talk beforehand, and I'm sure this is friends and family type screening, or this is open to everybody film festival, or
This is open to as many people as I can convince to attend, which will be, I don't know, not a ton, I'm guessing. This is not as part of like a bigger film festival or anything. This is just like I talked to the owners of the drive-in, and they were like, "Heck yeah, we want to show a movie. Well, here's how we'll split the profits and stuff."
that's great. Well,
So
I will tell you this, just because this is something I love to do. Go on to Reddit, go on the horror subreddit, and also go for Colorado, because you're based in Colorado, right?
that's right.
Just go on these subreddits, and you will be able to find people at the wazoo who will go and support you.
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of that because like the amount of AMAs I've done, and people have hit me up just based on Reddit, have hit me up clearly on Facebook. After Say the Attic came out, it was fun for me because I was just like, cool, this movie's doing well. I'm at home with my then 3-year-old whose school shut down because of COVID. I was like, send me your scripts, non-WGA, send me your scripts. I had like 75 people send me scripts. I read all of them, or as far as I could get without, hitting my head against the wall, because some of them were not good. But then that's how I came across Glorious, and then I attached Rebecca McKendry to it. And Christian Armagita is one of my dearest friends. He's the producer of Blackcoat's Daughter and We Saw in the Darkness, and he is one of my favorite people in the whole world. And I think that's the thing that I love about movie making, is just you get to bring so many good people together. Whether you're going just to be at a screening, whether you need somebody to day play and be like, we need somebody to be a body today. Can you please help me? It's so fun.
yeah, yeah. I interviewed a guy a few years ago who about I can't remember the name of the movie, Burnout City, something like that. It's a neo-noir film.
Okay.
And then after that, he moved to the town that I live in. And his whole thing, like during the interview, was about like, it's all about like, you just gotta go out and do good things for as many people as you possibly can and get to know as many people as you possibly can. And it's been amazing watching him like put that into practice and get to know absolutely everybody in the local filmmaking scene. And like I see him on everybody's projects all the time. uh
That's how you're gonna call in your favors later. But my analogy is always the same. I've got two analogies. It's like whenever I'm making a movie and we're casting, it's like, are you going to Harvard? Are you going to State? Or are you gonna be community college? Like where are you going with it? Very similarly, like I came up from the world of music. You want to start one day, you want to be that band who's opening up for, a mid-level band, and then you want to go to a bigger venue where you're in the middle of this, middle of it. You're not the opener, you're actually on tour to eventually be the headliner. And so it takes time to get there. You're the Ari Asters, that's like one in a billion. That doesn't happen. But if you're the guy who's cutting your teeth, you're like, Benson and Moorhead, who are, you know putting two pennies together to make an incredible sci-fi movie, and now you're do movies, and now you're doing Marvel. It's doable. You just have to be good at your craft, trust the process. You need to be able to say, I need help. A lot of people can't do that, but you need to be able to say, I need help. And when you do that, it opens up a lot of doors also. I think a lot of people think making a movie, it's the director's movie. There's so much communication, there's so much collaboration that goes into it. Sometimes it works out well and you get a hit. Sometimes things don't go perfectly. And as you know, on set, things don't always go perfectly. But when you show your movie at the drive-in, no one's going to know that, one light didn't work, or, somebody, ate your Uncrustable and it put you in a bad mood that day. No one will know that. It's just what's on screen.
Yeah, yeah. Here's
This
hoping
this
people
totally
like things.
changed. This was going to be all about Stay the Attic, and now it's just like
Oh
the
yeah,
act,
man.
just movie making.
So
It's
so
fun.
many so many connections. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a lot of fun. How different people approach the interviews. I like to make it conversational and talk about whatever's
Well, I got another
grabbing.
question for you, and here's
Okay.
something you'll get too. What's next? Do you have anything up lined up? Do you have another script ready to go? Do you have a sequel ready to go?
So actually,
You got to
no.
be ready
It's a
because the
standalone film. I am not trying to make a career out of filmmaking. I've done the starving artist thing before, and I have no
uh,
desire to go back to that. Filmmaking is a hobby side hustle thing. If it broke
yeah,
even, I'll be happy. Um, and uh, I do not have another script because I never had a first script. It was an experimental film shot without a script.
that's
Uh,
cool.
the actors and I would like talk about a scene, and then we would act it out, with improvised dialogue, and then after that we would talk about what the next scene should be and go from there.
Very good. And how many days was this?
It was a 3-day shoot.
And how many minutes is the feature?
67.
Great.
So
I was to 60 minutes, dude. And
yeah.
it's a feature over 60, so you're there. You're there.
Yeah. I was
Wonderful.
when we were on day 2 of shooting, I was going, man, I have no idea if this is going to end up like a 20-minute short or if I'm going to be able to make it be a full feature. But yeah, it worked out as a full feature.
Did you edit?
Barely.
Did you also edit it yourself, or?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Editing is the part that I am best at and find the most like enjoyable.
Oh, what about score and did you, because music?
um, so I know a guy who is a composer. I actually am friends with several composers. And I've worked with them on different projects. And the guy who scored this, I've worked with on a few 72-hour film festival
Oh,
things.
fun.
Yeah. And where I'm usually the only entry in those that has original music.
That's
Everybody
dope,
else.
dude.
Yeah.
I think you should, it's hard to be. I there are times when I'm a writer and I feel like I am an artist, and there's other times where I just feel like I'm a guy who's just doing notes constantly. I think you, the bug will bite you again at the premiere. It should, there's something beautiful about creating something out of nothing. And
Oh yeah.
I've got so many friends who are musicians where they're like, "Oh, listen to my song," and I'm like, "Cool, that was a great 3 minutes." I'm like, "You want to read this 90-page script?" And they're like, "No." So that's cool though. Try and think what else. I think, yeah, it's hard because it's like my first script that I got optioned. It was like this big studio project. It was like $100 million script. I'm just like, this will
Oh
never
wow.
be my first movie. And so it worked like, and so you kind of learn, you're like, you got to start up small. But I've got friends who make movies for 50,000 bucks, 100,000. We're shooting one that's sub 300,000. We're on like day 11 right now. But I think it really comes down to how can you stretch a dollar, and really, as a writer, what I see in my head, do I want to write this epic, cult movie that's going to be huge, or can I take that idea and put something smaller where we could actually get this thing made? I think there's always going to be that balance, and there's plenty of writers who they write their script or they write their story and they put it on and they save it, and then that's it. I'm a huge proponent of putting your artwork out. You put your art there out there. You know, do a table read with your friends. Go and with Final Draft, let it like do the voices and all that stuff, and hear how the script and how the story flows. It's just what I've learned is that the only way you're going to get a movie made, unless you're like read by like the big, you know, studio and, different agents and whatnot, you've got to do it yourself. And it's kind of like a movement. Like you do that, you believe something's important, you get one other person to believe in it, and then they take it out, then you get another person to do it. And, you know, I was I'm probably going to be working with the guys who did Off Ramp. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie. It
No,
was
man,
the oh, Off Ramp's great. It's
it's it's it's amazing how every movie that you name is either something that I haven't even heard of, which is unusual for indie horror films, or it's something where like I have already interviewed the director of it. There's nothing in between.
well, I recommend this movie. It was on the festival routes last year. It finished its festival, and it's basically there's no better way to say it. It's a juggalo horror movie. And so it's like these two guys, one guy gets out of prison and they decide they're going to go to the gathering of the juggalos to see Insane Clown Posse. And it's
Okay.
like a hero's journey until all this messed up stuff happens. But the characters that that they created, they're so good. It's so much fun. It's a really fun movie. It's on Tubi right now, but I
Oh,
highly
all right.
recommend it because it's like every now and then you'll see a movie that just it surprises you and then you say I want to reach out to that director, I want to know how they did this, I want to know what they're doing next. And I try to do that, and I've been really good about it with people reaching out to me out of the blue like, hey, will you read me? I'll read the first 10 pages, and if it's something that I really like, I'm going to keep going. But I try to always give the benefit of the doubt because sorry about that, my Futurama ringtone brand new
Uh,
season came out.
couldn't actually hear it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah. No, my co-producer, we just sold another movie, and so, yeah, no, we were just going over the paperwork because it's always something. It's whether you're filming something and or fixing, a car that's not starting that you need to be on set. Like, there's always something. But yeah, I really feel like the best thing to be is to be a creator is just to be collaborative, and to be open because you never know who you're going to make friends with. And I was always that guy who was befriending folks I would never cross paths with at concerts. And, you just kind of go out and you communicate. And, you know, especially when it comes to raising money for movies, you never know who might be a dentist and hates their job and just wants to be on a red carpet and will finance you. You just never know.
I love how specifically dentists like
My dad's a dentist, so he's a retired dentist. But it's
yeah.
true. Dentists have the highest suicide rate. Like, there's a movie right there, but it's like they've got the highest suicide rate, and so they hate their jobs. They make a good living, but then sometimes you just got all this money, and you wanted to be that artist, but your parents like made you do this instead. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer, and I took the LSATs, and I said I fucked that up, and I studied for it too. I studied like a motherfucker. I wish I had a photographic memory. I, I'm just, I can study a lot. I think that's the way to do it. But I took that exam and I was just like, I fucked this up. And so the next day on a whim, I took the GREs literally, and I got close to perfect score on it. And I said, I'm meant to go make movies and write and do this, not, chase ambulances and, women whose breast implants exploded. It's not for me. I'd rather be a creative and work with creatives. And yeah, I think that's just where I landed with this. And, I work with like Matt came to me out of the blue. He went to Syracuse. I graduated in '06. He graduated, I think, 10 years later, something like that. He's young. And he goes, "Will you sit with me and have a beer and talk?" And then I became his lead producer on his movie. I ended up helping him with everything on it. I ended up selling it to Screenbox for him. We've been dealing with distribution and getting the physical releases out, and it's a beautiful thing when you see someone who is so willing to do whatever it takes to have his dream come true. And sometimes that means wearing every freaking hat possible, but as you know, sometimes that's necessary. So, I think helping is just, that's just the key of being a good creative producer, writer. To be a good writer, you need to listen to other people. Because here's the thing, you write a real slow burn script, you don't let anybody do it, you decide to make it yourself. You raise $400,000, $500,000 magically, and then you have a slow burn movie and you never took anybody else's input. And so you got to go with your gut and say this is either going to be really, really awesome, but then there's also the flip side of the coin where you're like, I hope somebody's going to want to buy this because I need to get people paid back. And
Hmm.
I've learned, the business side is something I've been really, really gravitating towards because you personally as a producer, you only want to you want your last movie to be great and you want your next movie to be better. And that's kind of always the role you want to go. And like I'll work with, young filmmakers and help them get their movies made. And even if it's not a home run, if there is, an inkling of here's good storytelling, here's imagine what these guys could do with another $200,000. Imagine what they could do with a gimbal, imagine like that type of thing. But I see the guys who are hungry and they want to learn, and those are the ones I want to work with. Like I said, I didn't have a mentor when I came out here. And so if I could bring some help and hope to those students and let alone, green filmmakers who are now making, you know, I think I'm like I said, I'm a big emo screamo punk rock guy. There's a band called Alkaline Trio. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Matt Skiba had one line and it's always stuck with me. It goes, everybody learns faster on fire. That's filmmaking. That's filmmaking. You're just on fire and you're trying to figure out how to put this thing out. And you hope you make something incredible in the end. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is almost a perfect segue into a question I always ask everybody I interview.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future of independent filmmaking going?
I see it becoming very interesting, just having dabbled into vertical dramas, but also into AI creative, world building. And I'm not saying using AI to take other people's jobs. I'm saying, picture this. You're a student, you're a young guy who you want to make a sci-fi movie. And you now have the tools capable to you where you can write up exactly what your story is, the world building, and you can make a 7-minute movie. And I'm sure it'll get better with AI with longer and longer. But you'll be in a situation where you could build this and you can make it. And instead of spending, millions of dollars, I'm sure studios are going to do the same thing regardless. But I think it's the perfect way for green filmmakers to learn how to direct. So because then you'll
Mm.
be able to move cameras and things around. It's almost like doing a proof of concept, but you're actually making content that you can, I don't want to say monetize because I don't want people to say AI, make money off AI, make money off AI. I think it's a good teaching tool. And you learn whether the story works, if it's going to be scary, but it also gives hope to, people who can't afford it because this making movies is expensive.
Yeah.
Getting a red camera is expensive. Getting insurance is expensive. Unless everything. Even when you're like you've got your finished movie and you're trying to sell it, you need E&O insurance, which is easily $3,000 or $4,000. Making movies, it's a business, and to give hope to people who could tell good stories and then maybe showcase it as a proof of concept to an investor, to a distributor, a sales company. I see AI helping with that. I see AI creating whole new film festivals. I was working with a guy who created a freaking I don't know what to call it, but it's like a world like I'm trying to think the best way to do it. It's like an immersive like avatar driven world that he
Mm.
created on a computer. It's all horror. And you walk around there and they've got film festivals, like they've got a movie theater that you could go and watch movies in this like film festival that's online. And so
Okay.
you're like, you've got an avatar walking around. You go through the cornfields. You're getting Barbara
So like
Crampton's
a
out
video
there.
game?
It's almost like a world building, a it's not AI, but like VR type thing. It's not even
Okay.
a video game because it's like you could talk to people and they'll announce your movie and they would show your movie in this world. It's just like this virtual film festival, which is incredible. Like I see AI doing that. I see people having film festivals where, cool, we'll do sci-fi. You could do really auteur type things with AI. And I'll say this too, I think people think that they just plug into like ChatGPT, write me a script about this, and you can, but I think there's always going to be creatives who utilize this as a tool, not as the means. And so, yeah, I don't know. I see that being a big thing with people using AI to create videos, having film festivals, and having a means to promote their work too, and communicate effectively with, computers and for career work. But I also see vertical dramas, it's huge. They're coming from China. There's so many companies like Crazy Maple and freaking Drama Box, Real Shorts. It's these melodramatic type vertical shorts that they stitch together to make it a movie. And so every episode is like a minute and a half. I see people taking that format and then doing horror movies and indie films like that too, because it opens up a new audience. I'm not an AI guy, but there are kids who are. It's like I've got an 8-year-old daughter who would much rather watch these people play with their dolls on YouTube than watch Disney Plus. But it's because it's just different audiences. And so I don't think you're taking away from the big pot from the studios. I think it's just people are watching content differently, and you need to be able to have that for them. So if you're able to do something that is effective, smart storytelling in that medium, you will grow an audience. It's just the way it is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely confirm that it from my perspective as well, it's becoming more common. I run a really small genre film festival called Slime Fest.
How fun.
Uh, and last year I got one entry that like used AI for a crowd shot of zombies, but other than that, it was just like a live
Yeah.
action film. Um, and this year, submissions have been open for like 2 months, and I've already gotten several fully AI films submitted.
Yeah. It's crazy because it's I think it's just the tools are changing and you figure out how to make those tools work for you. You know, it's like you can't afford a jib. Well, then you've got a drone, you do a cool shot with it. You know, there's just different ways to make things work for you. And I think, storytellers will somehow always keep creating. People started with, drawing on caves, and I think, AI is taking over, but I don't think it's taking things away. I think what is affecting us is the business itself. Companies are buying other companies, and that's making them decide who is going to be making these movies, whose movies we're going to sell. But I think as long as there's creatives, you'll always be able to put out your own media currently, unless under Trump something else changes. I don't know, but I just feel like you'll whether you're doing YouTube, whether you're doing Vimeo, whether you're going to put your money down to do a film festival because film festivals aren't cheap, they're not free. I think it really comes down to you know telling a good story. That's always going to be number one. People care about character. I The Long Walk could have been a very very different movie, but I loved it because I loved the characters in it.
Yeah,
You know what the movie's about from the trailer. It's like the Saw movies, but it's you watch it because you watch Saw because you want to see the traps. You watch The Long Walk because you want to go on that Stand By Me Stephen King type walk. And it's great.
yeah, yeah, definitely. When I was watching the trailers for The Long Walk, I was thinking like, man, this is either going to be great or terrible, and it'll completely come down to how much I care about the characters. And then it was great because I cared about the characters.
That movie, I got teary-eyed. I love that movie. That movie's up there with me with like freaking Wild Robot. Like I love like my daughter, I named her name's Ellie. My wife and I, our first date was the movie Up, so it worked really, really well because our second date was Drag Me to Hell. And I'm like little Larmy, it doesn't sound as cute. But yeah,
Oh,
I think, it's storytelling is number one. And books, movies, I think as long as you could tell a good story. I laugh at people driving. I go to take a shit in the bathroom, and someone writes something funny on the wall. You get a moment out of it. It's funny. So it's like I think people just want to live in the moment a little bit.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. You have 100 million projects going at once, it seems. Where would you like anyone who's listening this to find your things or follow along with what you're doing?
For sure, for sure. I think I'm always looking to work with good people. That's the number one thing. I always kind of have in my a no asshole clause because Hollywood's tough, and unfortunately sometimes things don't go the way they should go because people kind of rock the boat. If you're looking for me, I'm on Facebook, J Scott Goldberg, and that's that. And you can find me on IMDb. I'm on Yeah, I don't know. I'm easy to find. Like to think of that. Yeah, no, movies we got out. We got State of the Attic and Glorious both on Shudder. I've got Subject and Creeping Death on Screambox. I have I Will Never Leave You Alone on Dark Sky. Tenants on Cranked Up Films. Greywood's Plot, as mentioned, which I love, love, love. Terror Films put that one out. And yeah, no, we'll have another one. I can't really announce it. We've got one going shooting right now with Epic Pictures. I'll just say there's alligators in it. It's really fun. It's really, really cool. And we'll let that be. So we're
Love a
filming
good
that one right
creature
now.
feature.
It's so fun. I got a survival horror one that a studio is currently casting, and I can't really say much about that either, but it's very, very exciting. But yeah, no, I think, whether it's a small movie or medium size or a studio project, I think story is always key. Having the right team is key. Being kind is key, and being understanding and having a good year. Because a lot of times it's always me, but it's really, it takes a village to make any movie go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even with working with an ultra minimalist crew and cast for my found footage film, the credits at the end of the movie are still, like a little more than 2 minutes long.
Oh, totally. It's like even looking at like, we're all going to the World's Fair. Like it's literally in front of the screen movie, and it's more than one person. It
Yeah.
takes a village, and it takes people who believe in you and believe in your, what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like it's such a fun analogy because I brought up juggalos and all this stuff too. It's just like, if you'll always get people to go see Taylor Swift to fill out stadiums, but you'll still get your audience who wants to go to the gathering or go see ICP, go see Nonpoint, go see Slipknot. I think it's about just finding your audience. If you find
Yeah.
your audience, you're honest with your audience, sky's the freaking limit. Just don't dupe your audience. There's nothing worse than like going to see a movie and you're like, I thought this was going to be scary or based on the trailer, and this is not. I think honesty is always the best policy when it comes to like this what we do, but I also understand marketing as a ploy in it too. So yeah, I don't know. I just think, if you want to make a movie, start with a log line, turn that log line into a short synopsis, grow it out to an outline, do a big summary, write your script. Once you've got your script, rewrite it, have friends read it, and then, go into your network. Do you know anybody who's actors? Do you know anybody who's like part of like, if you're a small town, parks, like, parks and rec, people who do, theater there. When I was shoot anywhere outside of LA, the amount of restaurants where they're like, yeah, you can shoot here for free and we'll actually cater for you for free because they're just grateful to have you in there. Here, that'll cost you $5,000 and you don't even get like roll in the water. You got to bring your own generator for, electricity. I just think, it becomes, I love filming in small towns. I love filming anywhere. And it's whatever works for the movie is really the most important thing. But
Right.
it just becomes like, you make movies because you love storytelling. You write because you love storytelling, you know? And I've learned, like, I've built sets with zero construction background because you want it to look good and you want to be there. Because sometimes holding a hammer is better than nobody holding a hammer. So
Yeah.
otherwise,
As long
then
as long as you don't hurt yourself with it.
always wear the proper safety goggles. I'll say that. That's important. But yeah, no, I think, as a creative, it's hard to, like I said, I came in here, you thought I was just a writer. No one's just one thing. You can't be, you can't because, in the end, when the movie's coming out, you're still going to be your own publicist. You're still going to still market it. You're still going to, it's like doing an Indiegogo crowdfunding thing constantly. You're going to be preaching your movie to the stars because you want people to watch it.
Yeah.
Because if you have, you get bit by the bug, you want to make another one and then another one and another one. And, there's nothing more than rewarding than you look at your like your DVD, your physical media collection, and you've got things that you worked really hard. You put your blood, sweat, and tears, and really just an idea that you had in the middle of the night, or you're in the middle of taking a shit and this idea hits you and you're like, that is cool. I would want to see that. And then lo and behold, a year or two later, people can.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of magic right there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
Well,
thank you again for coming on.
yeah, Tom, I appreciate you having me, and especially like you work with people that I adore, and you've interviewed them, and
Yeah,
I wish
what a coincidence.
and
Yeah.
I wish you luck with your screening. It's
Thanks.
gonna be scary, it's gonna be magical, but it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I am definitely excited for it.
Love it. Awesome. Well, you've got my info. If
Yeah.
anybody wants to find me, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Yeah, I'm on Reddit.
Yeah,
Always on there.
I'll put links in the description.
But yeah, no, I think, the biggest thing is, in order to make a movie, you don't say, I want to make a movie. You say, I am making a movie or I
Yeah.
am writing. It's just that put the positive out there. There's enough negative, put the positive. Awesome. Well, Tom, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.